your mic. I need your mic.
There you go.
It must be that one.
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Up here, Bobby.
It was just childproof. Okay, item 2 is election of commission chair and co-chair. We had a discussion this morning. I think there'll be 2 motions. The first motion is whether we want a 1-year, 2-year commitment or just a 1-year commitment. That'd be open to the floor. Yvonne?
Mr. Chairman and members, I really believe that
We need to get some sound going.
It's the black one up above. That's what the people.
okay. I really believe that we should have the option of 1 year or 2 years. And I say that at the same time that I do think there's something to be gained by having the chair for 2 years. I would really suggest, if I can get people to look at this, that we have the chair for 2 years, but the vice chair at the end of 1 year can be reconsidered. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for a chair to serve a 2-year term, the vice chair to serve a 1-year term. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. With that, nominations are open.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Fran Inman for chair for a 2-year term.
Second.
Any other nominations? The nomination is for Franny to serve a 2-year term. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Vice Chair, Jim.
Chairman, I'd like to nominate Mr. Jim Arp for vice chair. Second.
Moved and seconded for Jim Arp. Questions? Any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Jim Medaffer to serve as vice chair for 1 year.
And I will second that.
There's another nomination, Jim Medaffer for vice chair. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, then we need to vote. It's a public vote, right? Okay, all those in favor of Jim Arp, would you please raise your hand?
For 1 year. It's 1 year.
Right,
It's 1 year, right?
For a 1-year term.
for 1 year. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those in favor of Commissioner Medaffer, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Commissioner Arp is elected as vice chair. Thank you very much.
But then you would be available next year. Okay.
Item 3. Welcome to the region.
I'm accustomed to babies.
Yeah. You're a peacemaker. You did the right thing.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, good afternoon. James Corliss, the CEO of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. I want to also introduce my colleague here, Derek Minima, and give you a brief but a very warm welcome to the greater Sacramento region. I know you come here all the time. I know you know Sacramento, but I want to challenge you perhaps whether or not you really truly know this dynamic and vibrant 6-county region, which is why exactly we show you the photo we do. This region is on the rise. There is tremendous optimism, opportunity, and hope, economically and otherwise. We are growing, one of the fastest growing regions in California between 2000 and 2017. City of Sacramento, fastest city growth rate in the entire state of California just last year alone. I mentioned I represent the Sacramento Council of Governments. We're one of your COGs and your MPOs in the state. We are unique in that we represent a truly diverse region, economically, politically, rural, suburban, urban. We have all forms. In fact, we are actually an advertising test bed for national marketers, and we want to be a technology test bed for all of you in the state. 31 board members on our Council of Governments, 22 cities, 6 counties, and 2.4 million people. We are getting an influx of migrants from the Bay Area, from other places around the state, up and down the Central Valley as we speak, and we are growing rapidly fast. We have been named and are very proud of being one of the most family-friendly communities in California. 3 of our cities in the top 10, as well as just being named one of America's top cities to visit in 2018. So for your vacation this summer, think about the Sacramento region. When we put together our Amazon HQ2 proposal, and I would really encourage all of you and all of us to truly think about that connection that you so often talk about between economic growth and prosperity and transportation and jobs. The Amazon HQ2 proposal, I think, was a real lesson learned in 21st century economic development. And one of the things we learned from that Amazon HQ2 proposal was we are a mega region. Northern California, our connection to San Francisco and Silicon Valley is really essential. And because of that triangle that you see up there, in terms of that commute between both UC Davis and UC Berkeley, but that triangle between San Jose, San Francisco, and Sacramento, that makes us think about both the I-80 corridor and the 580 corridor, but also our intercity rail connections. We have some incredibly exciting opportunities and investments that are going to make travel between this region and the Bay Area that much faster and more meaningful, and actually be able to make us competitive the next time an Amazon HQ2 rolls around. We are building a streetcar and are incredibly thankful for the $30 million TIRCIP grant that we had to basically spark the connection across this river that has so long divided us between West Sacramento and Sacramento, sparking economic development in the rail yards. The rail yards, the biggest single infill development project west of the Mississippi. This project is being delivered and facilitated by our Council of Governments through a JPA, and we look to an opening in 2020. We have a lot of projects that we need to get done, as does, we understand, every region. Senate Bill 1, as you've heard over and over again, I can't tell you how important SB 1 is to making sure that we invest in our infrastructure, repair our infrastructure, and build out our network, frankly, through a lot of HOV and carpool facilities. One of which I want you to remember, we'll come back to, is the US 50 carpool lanes, closing a gap. We built carpool lanes out to our east, but we did not actually extend them to downtown. This is a project that will include RT capacity enhancement on a parallel corridor with light rail. We're going to come back to this project, essential for our region. But all the way up the hill, up to Lake Tahoe, because we are a mega region that extends from Tahoe to the Bay Area, investments in US 50 in places like El Dorado County, the Camino Safety Project, critical to our livelihood. We take pride not only, and I'm going to tell you in a second, about being an innovative region technologically, but in how we deliver projects. And for that, I want to introduce Derek Minima, the Executive Director of the Capital Connector JPA. Derek?
Good afternoon. Sacramento's Capital Southeast Connector is one of this region's largest transportation projects. At 34 miles, the new 4-lane expressway will connect the city of Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, and Folsom through the counties of Sacramento and El Dorado. To date, over $180 million in connector improvements have been constructed to improve goods movement and safety along the corridor, largely funded through our self-help county transportation sales tax. But a project of this magnitude requires leveraging from our state and federal sources to ever be complete, which is why we are very excited about the new competitive SB 1 programs. But we recognize that to be competitive, Sacramento has to be innovative. And so the connector has implemented several pioneering qualities. For example, we have partnered in our region's Habitat Conservation Plan, or HCP. This HCP is the first in the United States to combine Endangered Species Act and Clean Water Act permitting into a single streamlined process. We've also been authorized by the state to use the CMGC contracting method. Our first project is underway under this unique pilot legislation. And finally, we've been partnering with Region Technology, a trade association of local tech companies, to explore how to best prepare for the next generation connected and autonomous vehicles along a corridor. James.
Thanks, Derek. And Derek mentions technology, and I mentioned earlier that we are a test bed in this region for marketers. We want to be a test bed for technology, for autonomous, shared, and connected vehicles. We are the first green city in California with the VW award of $44 million. We are also 5G, one of the first cities in the nation to get the Verizon 5G. That is all the foundation, the operating system on which we want to build one of the most highly advanced transportation networks in the nation. We're also about to launch bike share. We haven't had bike share. We've been one of the cities in the regions that's been behind, but this year, coming up, we're about to launch the biggest electric bike share program in North America. Between Davis, West Sacramento, and Sacramento, all electric, 900 electric bikes will be on the streets this summer through a public-private partnership, because that's how these deals are working now. This is a private provider coming in, and us as a local government and as a council of governments negotiating that deal with a private vendor. We have a program, I mentioned this to you down in Modesto at your meeting in October, called Civic Lab. We're proud of this program. We've launched 9 teams, 12 jurisdictions, 19 agencies coming with transportation challenges that they want to use technology in order to solve. And here's a great example. In West Sacramento this year, we're going to launch a pilot program with another private provider called VIA. VIA basically provides something that is a combination of a city bus and an Uber vehicle. It's a shuttle, it's on demand, rides are between $2 and $5 a pop, and we want to do point-to-point, multiple passenger transit, next generation transit, and test to see how this works in our region. This is a startup. And like many startups, we might fail. But if we do fail, we want to open source that. We want to provide lessons learned to the rest of the state. As much as we know, we need to embrace the next generation of transportation innovation. We want to do that and not just be the backyard of the state capitol, but be your front yard. Here's the VIA pilot. There's a lot of great partners in this, including a lot of the university campuses in UC Davis and UC Berkeley, who are going to be monitoring and evaluating this test. We are thinking very much about low-income riders, those who don't have smartphones, seniors, the unbanked, and people with disabilities. And finally, a low-tech version of this that we're really excited about. We and the Sacramento Air Quality Management District have invested in a new app, an app that will actually provide parents at a school, of which I have to suffer through many mornings through the school drop-off. We're going to create an app in the San Juan Unified School District that will match parents to each other for rides, to share rides to school. A simple but really powerful idea, background checks, closed system. And again, have a look at this map. So San Juan Unified up in the Orangevale, Sacramento County to the east of downtown. Parents share those rides to school, and then along those US 50 carpool lanes that I mentioned earlier, get to actually share the ride with each other to downtown to their jobs. That infrastructure, those HOV lanes, critical to making this future technology work. With that, thank you. Welcome to our new and dynamic and exciting, vibrant region. Please take a second look if you think you know our region. We've changed a lot in the last couple of years. Thanks very much. Appreciate your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. James, if you could stay at the mic for just a moment. First, thank you for this new role you've taken on in the last 10 months. We've worked together for more than a decade in different iterations, and you're just an outstanding leader, and I'm glad that you're now focused in this region. You mentioned 900 electric bikes. I want to shift that from 2 wheels to 4 wheels. Our mass transit buses often spew incredible amounts of pollution, often in our most vulnerable, poorest neighborhoods. Are you taking steps towards all-electric buses, as well transit buses, as well as all-electric school buses?
And we didn't even plan that question, right, Carl? That was just completely ad lib. Thank you for asking that. So I mentioned that we had the VW settlement, and we've got a green city, and Electrify America will come in as a nonprofit. Again, brand new, right? We're setting up a nonprofit that's sort of an intermediary. What does that mean? How do we provide all-electric car sharing, especially to disadvantaged communities? The next step on that is a plan that we will take to our board, the SACOG board, this spring, which will be basically a green region plan for electric, low to no emission transportation. And part of that is transit vehicles.
Good.
Herein, as you know, lies one of the conundrums, which is we want to do our part to meet the state's very ambitious greenhouse gas targets, because we want to be a leader as a state. That incremental cost is going to be a big incremental cost on those new purchase of electric buses. We want to test hydrogen fuel cells. We want to test other forms, but whatever it may be, we want to be the test, again, here in this region to go to an all-electric transit system. And finally, I'll just say to you, the other thing that I want to see within a year, when you fly into Sacramento Airport and you go to the rental car counter and they want you to upgrade you to that bigger car, I want them to upgrade you to an electric vehicle.
That's smart.
That's our goal.
That's smart. James Corliss, thank you, and I'd love to exchange cards with you before you leave today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Item 4, Stephen.
Yes, Commissioners, item 4 is a resolution of necessity appearance. This appearance is via correspondence, but I would like to have the chair just check to see if anybody is here from the property owner or representative of the property owner. Hearing that there's nobody here, staff would recommend that you approve this resolution of necessity.
Second.
Motion by Gimmetti, second by Art. Question? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 5, approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Madaffer, second by Lucy. Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 5, 6, that's right. Commissioners meeting for compensation.
I move we be compensated.
I second.
Motion by Art, second by Dunn.
Let's discuss.
Yeah, really.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 7, Susan.
Okay, Commissioners, I have a lot to share with you today. I'll work to keep my remarks short and brief. But first, I want to just inform everyone the good news that Commissioners Tavellini and Burke were unanimously confirmed by the Senate on January 22nd, 2018. And I also want to make sure everyone knows today is a bittersweet day for the Commission. Today is Secretary Kelly's last day as the Secretary of Transportation. Tomorrow he'll start a new role, and I'm sure he'll share a little bit about that. But I just wanted to take a moment during my report to just thank the Secretary for his leadership, his partnership, and for all the good things that he did for this state, not only for transportation, but in all the roles that his leadership in all the different areas with so many other departments, CHP, DMV. I think about the unlicensed driver's license and, monumental accomplishments during his tenure. In transportation, we know that Senate Bill 1, his leadership of others, but his leadership within the administration really, we've worked for so many decades on working at shoring up the shortfall. And Secretary Kelly, this state is truly grateful for your leadership. And I just wanted also to thank you for your partnership with the Commission, for the respect that you have shown the Commission. And on a personal note, I truly enjoyed working with you, and I will miss it. So thank you for everything. Okay. And next, I wanted to let everyone know that today, Director Doherty will be awarded the WTS 2017 Honorable Ray LaHood Man of the Year Award for the Sacramento chapter. So tonight we will, those of you who will be attending, will celebrate that award. So congratulations.
Okay.
And Commissioners, I want to just update you, the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee did meet on December 8th. The TAC members were briefed on the recently completed report on the Road Charge Pilot Program. The TAC members right now are moving into the phase where they will be advising, developing recommendations for purposes of advising the Commission on future legislation to inform a road charge, should that be something that we should all be working on. And so that's something that the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee is endeavoring over this next year. And as an action item today, I have two actions that I wanted to ask you to take an action on. The first is to update the CTC meeting calendar to reflect a June 27th joint meeting with the Air Resources Board in Sacramento, and also an update to the meeting calendar to change the date for the Fall Town Hall meeting to September 19th and 20th, 2018, and that town hall will be held in Gonzales. It's a city south of Salinas. And with that, staff would recommend your approval of those changes to the meeting calendar.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Dunn, second by Modafer. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And Commissioners, I just want to remind you that tomorrow, upon adjournment of the business meeting, we will hold a program delivery workshop with Caltrans here in this room. So those of you interested in attending that, the purpose of that joint meeting is really for all of us to have a conversation about program delivery and carrying out the new responsibilities set out through Senate Bill 1, as well as just ensuring and talking about the different processes we have in place to ensure accountability and that our fiduciary responsibilities are carried out. So that's the purpose of that. And then there is a STIP hearing tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. in the same room. I have a number of personnel appointments that I want to bring to your attention. And at your desk, you have, under my report, this tab number 7. You'll see a little bit of information on each of our new employees. And I would like to have each new employee stand up so that you can see who they are, and also those in the audience. You know, you can also see them, or anyone viewing webcast, because these are new staff members that you'll be working with. And I'm just so grateful for all of them accepting these appointments. And I know our whole team is looking forward to working with everyone. So the first, with the departure of Eric Thronson, we have appointed Jacqueline Campion as the Deputy Director for Legislation. This is Jacqueline. We've also appointed Jophil Borja as the Assistant Deputy Director for Legislative Affairs. And for programming, we've appointed Robert Nelson as the Deputy Director for Transportation Programming. He's filling the position that was vacated when Mitch Weiss was promoted to Chief Deputy Director. And then under programming, we have Matthew Yoscott as Associate Deputy Director. And Matthew, we're grateful to have Matthew on our team. He started just a few weeks ago and handled the local partnership formula program expertly, and just truly grateful he's here. The next appointment for the programming area is Christine Gordon. She serves as a staff services manager too. She will be assisting the deputies, the associate deputies from the programming area. Christine, welcome. Also helping us out in programming, I don't see him, but an old friend that many of you have is Juan Guzman. Is Juan here? He may not be here. He's come back as a retired annuitant. And we also have Megan Pedroncelli, who is not here today, but she's an instrumental member of our team. On the project delivery side, helping us with the accountability and oversight responsibilities of the shop is Terry Anderson. She's a registered engineer. And Terry, welcome. For communications, we've hired Amy McPherson. Amy is our public information officer. And on the administrative side, you all had an opportunity to meet Denise Mitchell. Denise, would you please stand? Many of you will work with Denise, or when you call us, you'll be talking with Denise, and we're so thankful that she's here. And James Malinovisky is not, oh, James is here. Hi, James. Okay. Good. James is working on our budget and finance issues administratively. And so I have a few more. Apologize for this. Tried to keep this short. I guess you saw the team members that we just added. And I just want to take a moment again, I know I do this with each report, but our existing team is a workforce beyond any comprehension. They're a wonderful team of people. We just added a wonderful group of new individuals, but, you know, just really thank you to our staff that has carried out so much in such a short period of time and done it expertly and transparently. And so, you know, I am truly grateful, and I know all of us in this room are grateful to you. So now we have a little help for you. And last but not least, today we wanted to recognize Eric Thronson because we didn't give him a proper send away. And so Eric, would you come up, please? He's got a beard now.
Oh, the beard?
Yeah.
What's that since he left?
Susan didn't allow beards.
No, I did not have a rough one. Thank you.
What's that?
That's right, she wouldn't let me.
How do I turn
Wow.
Thank you.
this? I have no idea how to. Does this? Oh, it's working. Okay, Eric. So I wanted today to take a moment to recognize Eric for everything that he did in his time with the commission. Eric, you were instrumental in making changes within the commission staff as far as our procedures and our relationships with the legislature and the legislative staff in our program. You know, for that, we now have a process in place that has really helped to facilitate our role in advising and assisting the legislature. And for that, you know, I am truly grateful, and I know this commission is, and the procedures that you set in place and the efforts that you underwent while you were here have really, they'll live on through us, through you. So we're very grateful. And also your implementation of legislation that I know you had worked on in the legislature, your being there and helping us in implementing AB 194. You were there, we watched SB 1 pass through together. I mean, there's so much that Eric did while he was here. And so you've done, at your time here, you made a big difference for California, for this commission. And we know that you will continue that in your new role. We're excited about it. We know that you'll continue your partnership with us, and for that, we're very grateful. So thank you for everything, Eric. Thanks. We're giving him his staff sign. He can keep it and come back. And
That's just to remember where your heart is.
That's right.
Commissioners, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Commissioner reports. Mr. Arp, you wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sure many people in this room remember Bill Lockyer, who had a long and successful career as a legislator and as a state constitutional officer. Probably not quite as many of you were around when he was the pro tem of the Senate. That hails back to the early 90s, but that's when I first became acquainted with Secretary Kelly, who had a different job back then, had a little more hair, but not a lot. But over the years, I developed great admiration and respect for this gentleman who showed incredible hard work and understanding of the transportation policies that we had to deal with. Some of them were pretty tough stuff, particularly during the years of budget fights. I never ever had in a situation where what he may have told us things that we liked or didn't like, but never did I ever have to wonder if he told us things that were true or not true. What he told us was always square, and that's part of the reason I have such tremendous regard for him. Secretary Kelly, you've been, in my view, the best transportation secretary we've had. You know the issues. You built this agency into what it is today as a standalone transportation agency. You have done a wonderful job. You're a great friend, and we're going to miss you in that spot. We do wish you well. You probably will need it in your new job. It's a tough job that you're jumping into, but you've never shirked a challenge, and so we're going to be behind you all the way, and thank you for all that you've done.
I want to second everything that the Commissioner Arp has said. I knew how tough you were when I first met you. You were working for John Burton. Yes. And if you could work for John Burton, I knew you could work for anybody.
I just want to send a personal thank you. I mean, you know, there's a lot of us who are outside of the legislature who, but spend a lot of time there. And, you know, when we come and advocate for the things that are near and dear to us, most of the time we kind of want instant satisfaction, instant gratification, if you will. And you were always there to kind of temper that down. You know, you always had the long game in mind, and with your patience, and I can't believe I'm saying this, ultimate wisdom, most of the time things got done. I can't thank you enough for what you've done for our industry. You've put literally hundreds of thousands of men and women to work, and we'll never forget that. And as Jim said, we wish you well in your new endeavor. Should you ever need anything, don't hesitate to pick up the phone. Thank you for everything. Any other commissioner comments?
Ditto.
Ditto.
We got a lot of dittos. Well, then now it's your turn, Mr. Secretary.
Well, thank you. As Susan indicated, this is my last day in the role of Secretary for the Transportation Agency. Tomorrow I start a new position with the California High-Speed Rail Authority, a project certainly with challenges but also with great opportunity. And so I'm looking forward to diving in and getting to work on that starting tomorrow morning. I do want to say how important the work of this commission has been, and will continue to be going forward. We spent the better part of 3 years working closely with this commission, with our legislative leaders, including Chairman Frazier and Chairman Bell, to move forward on what became an historic transportation investment package, one that really puts the state in a position to, rebuild our dilapidated infrastructure and build the communities that people want going forward. I mean, I was buoyed to hear Jim Corliss earlier talk about what it means to Sacramento to be able to build the communities they want because we have SB1. That work wasn't just my work, it was certainly the work of the broader administration, the legislature, this commission, and people up and down the state. So I am honored and privileged just to have the opportunity to work on something like that. And I continue to be proud of my association with this commission and developed many personal relationships I'll take forward with me in my new challenge. I will be counting on those personal relationships in one way or another going forward. So I appreciate the offer of continued friendship because I'm gonna need it.
Yes, you are.
And with that, I'm happy to give you my sort of final update from agency at this hearing, and I'm pleased and find it appropriate that my two updates are relative to the status of some SB1 programs. So the first is we have the Transportation Intercity Rail Capital Program, which is a program that receives funds both from cap and trade dollars and because of SB1, about $1.4 billion from SB1 dollars over the next 5 years. Our agency has just accepted applications for that program. We have a 5-year grant program that will include awards of about $2.4 billion. And we have received applications from 40 agencies for 47 different applications for projects with covering about $10.9 billion. So we obviously have a lot of work to do to go through and score and review these projects and move forward on a program. But we are very excited to, for the first time, this is the third round of these programs. This is the first time, obviously, we'll be marrying cap and trade dollars with SB1 dollars. It's the first time that we'll cover a programming period as long as 5 years, which will enable us to do larger, more transformative projects things like BART to San Jose in the Bay Area, important expansion projects in LA as they get ready for the 2028 Olympics, projects up and down the state of California. So this is a great opportunity for us. This is exactly what SB1 was to be about, and I'm thrilled that we are in the process of going through that. Our agency, the State Transportation Agency, will make those awards by April 31st of this year. So that's the first report I wanted to lay out. The second one is just a second program that we announced just yesterday. SB1 included a percentage of the sales tax on diesel that was imposed under that bill, that is for the commuter and intercity rail providers up and down the state of California. And yesterday we announced the first $51.9 million in grant awards for those projects. And that includes the ability of systems like the Smart Train in the North Bay now offering expanded weekday and weekend service through this program. For Metrolink, there's new equipment and track upgrades that are part of this program. And in San Diego, the Coaster service will receive clean locomotives, Tier 4 locomotives for that service, improving mobility and meeting our environmental objectives as well. So I'm very pleased that we're seeing SB1 in action. Again, that's what it's supposed to be about. And really looking forward to both the agency grant awards in April and the work you will all do on May 16th to move forward with the SB1 program. So to all of you, I just want to thank you for the work together up until now. I want to thank you in advance for the work we'll do together going forward. And it's been my great honor and privilege to work with you all. So thank you very much.
Any questions? Malcolm.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and members of the Commission, I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update. I also have a few introductions to make, albeit not as many as the Commission does. The first I'd like to start with is a formal introduction of the new Inspector General that was called for in SB1. Arena Ortega is here. If Arena could stand up and at least be recognized and welcome you aboard. Obviously, there are a lot of responsibilities called for in SB1, and Arena is going to play a very important role in her new position. She comes to us from being the Deputy Director of Policy at the California Department of Finance since 2013, and we welcome her aboard. Another introduction, I don't think it's a new introduction, but let me introduce Dr. Brian Maroney of more than just Bay Bridge fame. He is going to join the Director's Office and assume the role of SB1 Program Manager for the Department. If Brian could stand up, and welcome Brian to his engineer extraordinaire, academic extraordinaire, but we also want to make sure that we're coordinating all the SB1 efforts and everything that's called for, not only in the capital program, in the maintenance program, in the performance metrics, across the board. We want to coordinate that directly out of the Director's Office, and Brian is going to join us in that forum to be able to do that. My last introduction is, and I don't believe Giles Giovinazzi is here in the room, but Giles has worked for the department since 2014, serving as the Federal Transportation Liaison, not only for us, but also for the high-speed rail. And he will be assuming the position of Chief of Staff for Caltrans as Dara Wheeler has moved on to higher responsibility within the department. He will maintain his roles as the federal liaison as he takes over the Chief of Staff position. But Giles comes to us after 15 years of service in Washington, D.C., focusing on federal policy, legislative, and regulatory issues in the area of transportation, and that included 13 years as a Democratic staff director at the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Aviation Subcommittee in Congress. So he has a wealth of experience, and he also is a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve and served in Afghanistan. So I'm fortunate to have Giles not only on our team, but serve as the Chief of Staff. So those are my introductions. Two notes. I was glad to be able to join in the celebration of a major groundbreaking last Friday in Orange County on the 405 Improvement Project. I know that Commissioners Dunn and Inman were there, and as well as your Executive Director, but also Assemblymember Frazier. And if I recall correctly, this is a major investment in Southern California transportation, improving the quality of life of people who use that corridor, as well as the circulation of freight. But that project is the first project to take advantage of legislation that was passed and authored by Assemblymember Frazier, AB 194, for the design build. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and it was quite the celebration, and there will be quite a bit of activity from a construction standpoint along that corridor, but a project with great partnership between Caltrans District 12 and Ryan Chamberlain, as well as the Orange County Transportation Authority, and I rightfully so acknowledged Lucy Dunn's work behind the scenes with the business community to try to get consensus on that project, and I will echo that sentiment here. In January, I was able to attend the Transportation Research Board in Washington, D.C. It was my honor over the past year to actually serve as the chair of the executive committee for the Transportation Research Board under the National Academies of Science and Engineering and Medicine, and we had a small contingent there to try to get the latest news on transportation research across the country, and we'll try to get a detailed summary that we share within our department from that trip, and we'll try to share that with the Commission as well. The last thing I wanted to do was give you an update and a little bit of a presentation on the 405. So with your indulgence, I'll work through a PowerPoint very quickly with some pictures and some recognition. I will acknowledge that Tim Gubbins is here representing District 5, but Tim will be the first to say that he's representing a very large team that really tackled this tragic event in Santa Barbara and in Mendocino. The mudslide occurred, as many people know, on January 9th, and we were able to work very diligently to open that back up by January 21st. But there are some very impressive pictures, and this was probably ground zero of this event at the interchange of US 101 at Olive Mill overcrossing. And this is a look from the opposite direction at the devastation that was there and some of the debris fields that were encountered in the process. You can see just a small taste of the representative of the debris and material that ended up at this interchange. And I had the opportunity to visit this site about 2 weeks ago, and as impressive and as intimidating as the photos are, until you're out there in the field, you don't realize the magnitude of this tragic event. And our operations of reopening that critical corridor pale in comparison to the impact of the communities, the lives that were lost, and the disruption of folks that live in and around Mendocino and Santa Barbara. You'll see here that amassed about 12 feet of mud and debris. You can see the clearance of that bridge is 15 feet, and it starts to articulate the amount of effort that really needed to go into this event. Mobilization of equipment, the one thing that I wanted to highlight here is if District 5 did not have enough equipment, District 7 augmented their equipment. And if District 7 did not have enough equipment, we would have mobilized equipment from statewide. But we also enlisted the assistance of contractors to assist us in doing the work to reopen this corridor as quickly as we possibly could. One of the most difficult and challenging things was doing a dewatering operation, and that's coincidental with all the debris, and also at the same time overlapped with a search and rescue, and then subsequently a search and recovery effort, and we had to be very sensitive about our operations as we proceeded with all of those dynamics in place, but always knowing that we had to reopen the freeway and that critical connector as soon as possible. There was complete disruption between north and south. If you were north of Santa Barbara, you were stuck north of Santa Barbara. If you were south of Santa Barbara, you were stuck south of Santa Barbara. There was no way through. There were efforts to accommodate critical personnel at hospitals and other establishments, and they were escorted through on buses by the California Highway Patrol, and the California Highway Patrol, as well as other first responders, obviously played a very important role. Work went around the clock, 24/7, to be able to try to remove this as quick as possible. The contractor staff as well as Caltrans staff was working 12-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts on, 12-hour shifts off as they tried to tackle this effort. And again, here you can see some of the search and rescue and search and recovery personnel that we had to work behind and be sensitive to that activity before we were able to get in and do some of the removal of the debris. Some of the most important things that we did besides removal of material, and I'll talk more about that, was actually clearing the storm drains, which were completely inundated with debris and mud and water as well. And this was one of the first locations that I came upon at that interchange when I went down there and spoke to staff, because in addition to removing the material, until we were able to restore the drainage system, we would not have been able to reopen that freeway. This gives you a little bit of a sense of magnitude. 4 excavators filling 4 trucks every 3 minutes to be able to get the material out of there. I will share some of the numbers on the volume of material in just a couple of minutes. And then this is kind of some of the final repair work that had to be done and completed once it was removed. And in addition to the material that needed to be done, we also then had to remove all the guardrail to be able to remove the material from the median and get to some of the drainage systems and restore that, and then replace the guardrail as well. This is some of our staff at work. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I passed on as far as the team members, the maintenance workforce, the construction workforce, as well as the personnel for public information, sharing information, as well as the Emergency Operations Center, again, working around the clock. That is the level of the debris line on the column there that they were working on. So this is several days in it and making final preparation. These are some of the numbers that I was talking about. 105,000 cubic yards of debris removed, 350 staff between Caltrans, our primary contractor on this location was Granite Construction, 40 pieces of equipment, 1,500 trucks, 13,000 truckloads of material, 45,000 combined hours worked. Responded to 9 different locations over 11 miles just on State Route 101. And then the 8 creek crossings, and then the cost of the 101 restoration was about $11.25 million. You can see some of the after completed work on the screen on the left there, including some of the erosion control measures that were also taken. There was a lot of help from the community in the recovery. There was a lot of kudos for the efforts that we undertook. And we've gotten a lot of recognition and we've gotten a lot of interviews, but I don't think we've ever been tweeted out and called out by Oprah Winfrey before. So I thought that I would put that up there, and she actually said, look at what teamwork did for the 101 freeway. Thank you. Thanks, Caltrans District 5 and every crew that made this happen. Something special. You know you've made the bid time when Oprah Winfrey tweets about you. There is another state route that was severely impacted, not as large a route as 101, but State Route 192. This is all a result of some of the calamity that occurred with the Thomas Fire, but I did want to give you some sense of the magnitude of the impact to these communities upstream from 101. Let me go back one step. This is a picture of San Ysidro Creek near Highway 192. Highway 192 is down there somewhere. This is really when you started to see some of the devastation and the impact. I could not begin to tell you the names of all the staff that I encountered while I was out there, but these are some of the size of the boulders. My observations from being out there was when you look at the scenery and all the boulders, your eyes tell you that those boulders were there before and they're just covered in mud now. When the reality is these boulders were not there before, and these boulders came down from above this community and not only ended up in homes and in the street, but also impacted many of our bridges. They also had to, these are some of the size of the boulders. These boulders had to be removed. We were initially blasting these, but first responders were panicking when they heard blasts going off. So we had to change our strategy to use a chemical applicant to be able to split the rock so that there was not concern being raised by our blasting activities because there were gas lines that were compromised and first responders didn't know whether or not that was a separate emergency or us. Some of this debris on the right there actually is from other structures that came down in addition to some of the boulders, and this is just again reinforcing some of the magnitude. These are some of the creeks and the bridges that were impacted. We will need to replace 4 bridges on State Route 192, and the timing of those replacements will work very closely with the community as to exactly when we take them out of commission and we put those bridges back together, and we will conduct that work under an emergency project as well. The accolades that were passed on to us go beyond Oprah Winfrey. This is a sign that was actually posted down in the area that I thought was worthy of sharing with everybody here, and it goes back to how the department and the resources we have available to us and the contractors shine when emergencies happen and we're called upon. I do want to share a couple of pictures just of some of the team members, and it's difficult for me to go through and recognize many of them by name, and if I started to, I would leave too many of them out. But I did want to at least put a picture up and leave that picture up. The only other final note that I wanted to share is during this, with the complete cutoff of being north of the mudslide, Santa Barbara and Montecito and south, we did augment rail service on the low sand corridor, and we actually shifted cars statewide from the San Joaquin corridor as well as the Capital corridor to be able to add somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 seats per day on the rail lines to try to accommodate individuals trying to move up and down that southern corridor while the freeway was out. Even with those additional seats, it was not uncommon to leave 100 or 200 people on the platform when the train left because the capacity had been reached. But when you take that one north-south corridor out of commission, we did everything we possibly could during that time period to try to restore mobility to individuals. But that's just heightens the reason why we needed to try to get 101 open as quickly as we can. You were briefed last meeting about our efforts for expanding our fleet on a rail car standpoint. We are continuing to do that. That type of rail car purchase and that type of investment further allows us to have greater capacity on the rail side and just that multimodal application, not only for choices and options on every day, but then also those resources for the duplicative and backups for the transportation network. So I just wanted to highlight that. So with that, I just wanted to share that, not take up too much time. And again, I can't express my appreciation to Tim Gubbins and his entire team for the response that they provided to try to reopen that back up. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair and be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Fran.
Malcolm, thank you, and we all join you in saluting your team out there. I think we have a lot of heroes, and I love that sign that orange is a new hero. A couple of questions. We have a 101 project in that corridor that's been under design and various stages of construction stuff. Will we do anything differently now that we've experienced this? Is that going to impact anything going forward?
Well, the one thing that we have to do on any major investment in transportation is think about in different locations sea level rise. That wasn't necessarily the challenge in this location, but extreme storm events and whether or not the inundation of extreme weather events is going to have an impact on the transportation system. And what should we plan for when we're making an investment that we want to get 20, 40, or even 50 years out of it? The deadly combination here, literally, was the combination of the fires and then an inundation from an extreme storm and concentration of the storm. And that's a very challenging thing for us to plan for. But I think that will be the trick going forward, is to plan 50, 60 years off into the future, whether or not it's sea level rise or from a drainage facility, what types of extreme events might we need to plan for. I don't know that we'll ever be able to plan for something of this magnitude and the combination of such a fire followed by such a rain event. That will be a big challenge, but the dynamic is changing from weather events and sea level rise, and we do have to take that into consideration when we're making these investments.
Further questions? Thank you, Malcolm.
You're welcome.
Mr. Romano.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
You know, I think this is a sign. That's not the sign I see.
Cookies category. All right, I'm on. Hey, look at you. Lucky you guys. You guys are the best. I don't care what I say about you behind your back. You guys are all right. It's no fun that Brian Kelly's not here for me to heckle him, so it was nice working with him. Looking forward to working with Brian Annis, but I don't think Brian Annis is in the room either, so that falls on deaf ears. So I only have one introduction, not 30 and a few, but I have one introduction of Ken Bourne. Ken Bourne is our new planning and air quality team leader. So many of you may have known Jack Lohr. Jack had that previously. Ken actually got his start in his career in Monterey County, so he's got a little bit of history with California. So we're excited to have Ken here. So he attended the RTPA meeting yesterday, so he'll be very involved in all of that. Let's see, so continuing resolution, we got that till February 8th, so the whole federal government shutdown is February 8th. I'm sorry, February 8th, February 9th, we keep hearing both of them, so pick one. I'm hoping it's later. So there's a few milestones that are coming up here in the transportation performance management that everybody needs to make sure they're aware of. I think you're going to talk a little bit later today on the transportation asset management plan. That's due April 30th to us. Been a lot of work on that. There's been a lot of coordination with our office. We appreciate the effort that Caltrans has gone into to try and coordinate that. They've added 7,000 centerline miles of national highway system that isn't theirs. So it's a very complicated approach, very complicated challenge ahead of us, but we appreciate the coordination and the latest version that we've seen. I think you guys are going to get that today. Our office had no comments on it, so it meets all the federal requirements that we're looking for. So we appreciate that effort that's gone into that coordination. On May 30th will be the established targets for the pavement and bridge conditions, so that's coming up also. And my understanding that's on track too, so that's all a good sign. State of the Union, some people may have heard that yesterday. I don't have the 1.5 trillion with me. Paul, do you have? You don't have it either. All right, so sorry. So the president mentioned in the State of the Union that there was he's looking for Congress to pass a $1.5 trillion, at least $1.5 trillion transportation package. And I think, who knows what that's going to look like in the end, but there's clearly been a lot of discussion on that recently. But I think the critical pieces of that, and I don't have any details on it other than, listening to what he was talking about, there's a couple things that struck me in that, and I think these are the key points to it. State and local partnerships and private partnerships. So they're you heard that with the infra grants, where you're looking to see that there's state, local, and private dollars that are being invested in this to match the federal dollars, kind of leverage the federal dollars. And the other big part of that, I think, was process side. The president talked about takes 10 years to get something done, and it should only take 2. So I think we're gonna see a lot of change in the permitting process, and I think a lot of people would applaud that. I don't think anybody's looking to try and skirt the permitting process. I think we're trying to make it a lot more efficient and productive for everybody who's using it. So those are the few things. Infra and Tiger right now are both being evaluated. They're in the evaluation process. So I don't have any information on that other than to tell you it's all still in the hopper now. So no news is no news. It's not good news or bad news. It's just no news. And lastly, Malcolm's talked about this a couple times on the 101. I'm not sure everybody really gets it, and I appreciate Malcolm's the humility he has and the pride he has in Caltrans, but also the humility. That I heard on the radio that it took them a week. So great for them that it took a week. What's the reason it took a week? It was a search and rescue mission first, before it was a debris removal mission. So that picture you saw where they had the search and rescue people and Caltrans right behind them, they were going from me to you and going, Okay, there's nothing here. Okay, now you can clear it. I'm pretty sure nobody signed up for that on a maintenance crew, or nobody signed up for that on a contracting crew. I had an opportunity to sit on a call with Malcolm and his team, and it was the first call that they were bringing it together. It was early on in the process, and the first thing that, and I'll call Tony Tavares out, the first thing Tony Tavares said was, what do you need? Do you need physical help to come and help? We got districts that are here, headquarters, we got all this equipment, we're ready. Let us know how you want to do it. And then the other thing he said was, what do you need emotionally? What are these people who are dealing with? I mean, this is search and rescue. They're seeing, a couple pictures I saw were car seats, and I saw a gas can in the middle of a road, and I saw, one of those tool luggage rack things on top. And so you're seeing household goods in the middle of the roadway. So you're pretty sure that's not what you're expecting to see in the middle of the roadway. So that's one of the takeaways I always take away from an event like this is the people who are doing this probably didn't sign up to do this. They probably signed up to work on ditches and work on pavement and do good transportation stuff, not check and see if there's bodies and taking people's household goods and moving them to the side. So that's something I always appreciate, and what Caltrans does. The first responders the same way. They kind of sign up for a little bit more than I think the Caltrans and the other maintenance teams of Santa Barbara County and the other public servants that are out there. So I want to applaud Caltrans again in what they do, especially in the really unique situations like this. So thank you guys for all you do. That's all I have. Yep, I think that's all I got. Any questions for me?
Questions? Thank you, Vince.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. I noticed as well, and you may be aware of this, that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has come out with an infrastructure plan that includes a recommendation to the administration for a 25 cents per gallon gas increase. So just might be interesting to kind of follow along that as well from a federal side.
Right, and I've heard about, so I had called before I came down here, I'd called our public affairs office to talk to, hey, what do you got? Give me anything I can share, anything I can share. And there's a few of those things that are getting floating around, and there's been a couple things that are back and forth between people that I've seen that other people outside of government have shared with me, and if you look really close, draft is faded. So there's a lot of draft in a lot of these things. So the biggest thing I could say is keep following it. I don't have any information either way on something like that other than no news is no news until we hear news.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Regional agencies, Patricia.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners, and congratulations, Commissioner Inman and Commissioner Arp, on your elections today. And I'm Patricia Chin with LA Metro, and just to share with you about our meeting yesterday. This month, the focus was very much on SB 1 and keeping it on the books. Many regions brought with them thick envelopes full of applications for the trade corridor and the local partnership programs. And we're very happy to be introduced to the new staff, and we know that means that they'll help keep the programs running, and hopefully also that the veteran staff can get a little bit of a rest before the big rush. We visited the topic of keeping SB 1 on the books. And for yesterday's discussion, we once again had Bill Higgins of CalCog, and he kind of helped us to move the discussion forward to talking about what SB 1 means and how to communicate that. We talked about building up a pictorial and verbal narrative of what SB 1 means, whether it be the potholes that are the most hated in the communities, or being renderings of those major multimodal projects that are going to really transform mobility in an entire corridor. And I would say that among the regions, we're hearing expressions of growing recognition of the benefits and importance of SB 1. And just to tie it up, among the actions that you'll consider at the March meeting will be the accountability guidelines. We understand what is riding on the status and results information that we'll be reporting to you. And we want you to know that we understand that even though we will be recommending that it be done as efficiently as possible. Thank you for your consideration.
Questions? Thank you. Rural counties, Maura.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mara Toomey, Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. The Rural Counties met on January 26th and discussed the following issues and concerns. In regard to the SB1 accountability guidelines, the Rural Counties appreciate the recent workshops and the discussions that have been quite illuminating to us. We also appreciate Commission staff's understanding of the need for the balance of transparency and accountability with the reasonable reporting requirements and efficient and effective use of public resources. We'd also like to congratulate Commissioner Inman and ARP on their recent election. That concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Self-help, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Dunn on behalf of the Self-Help Counties Coalition. I'd like to start by also congratulating the commissioners on your new appointments and look forward to continuing to work with you in the commission. I'm a little disappointed that Secretary Kelly had to step out before I got to congratulate him on his new challenges. We, as the Self-Help Counties, have had a great experience in working with him as secretary and are looking forward to letting him take on this new challenge and feel like it's a worthy cause for his immense talents, and will be something that we're going to be looking at and hoping, encouraging and wishing him lots of success, knowing the great hill that he will be climbing. But we do want to extend our best wishes to him in his new role and understand the challenges that come with it. Self-Help Counties will stipulate all the comments about SB1. We look forward to continuing to participate on the adoption of guidelines and implementing SB1 and making sure that we all understand what the implications are moving forward with those dollars. We have a meeting February 20th where we'll be discussing some other ways to be more involved in that process. SB1 is obviously a critical partnership for all of us, and matching our local funds with those dollars at the state are critical moving forward to all of our future successes. So we'll be looking forward to discussing that further at our meeting. We're looking forward to partnering with the Commission in 2018. And we did have a call with the Department of Finance last week with the Self-Help County members talking further about the FAA issue, which has been kind of hanging around since the reauthorization hasn't moved forward through Congress. We have worked with the state in developing some comments. Each county submitted a plan. The state submitted a plan. FAA has, in some capacity, responded to some of the counties and not the state yet. We will be looking to see what the FAA's response is to the state plan, because it will likely impact how counties adjust or comply with the regulations as they're interpreted, or whether or not there's new legislation that's included in the reauthorization, which would shift it back to the way the regulation was interpreted for the last 28 years. Self-Help Counties has been working collectively to have language in an amendment with Congressman Napolitano and Lowenthal to amend the FAA current interpretation of the regulation of the expense of that aviation fuel. So we're going to continue to push the amendment, also working with the state of California on how to comply if that doesn't work. So we're kind of in a wait and see for now on that one. And past that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on that or anything else.
Thank you. Okay, item 15, Garth.
Sure. Commissioners, the presentation on innovations in transportation will focus on recent advances in traffic management, which are leading to the development of new technologies for operational improvements. We're fortunate to have Dr. Alex Bayan, who is a professor of engineering at UC Berkeley and also the director of the Institute of Transportation Studies at Berkeley. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bayan.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it's an honor for me to be presenting in front of you today. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to spend a few minutes to talk to you about next generation traffic management in California. I apologize, this is also slide-based, so you might have to look up here. So The work that I'm going to present fits very nicely into the California 2040 plan put together by Caltrans, with one of the major objectives is to reduce congestion, in particular in response to accidents and the corollaries that follow from this with safety. And I think we're very fortunate in California to have a wonderful infrastructure that has been deployed over the last decades to help us with efficiency in traffic operations. The pictures you see there show a few of the assets we have statewide that have enabled our agencies to operate the network of freeways and arterials very efficiently. And it's not just monitoring infrastructure, it is also controls infrastructure. If you think about it, not only the traffic lights on the arterials, but the metering light, the information systems, the metering on the bridges, the special use lanes, and so on and so forth. One of the projects that UC Berkeley has been leading with the California Department of Transportation is the I-210 Connected Corridors testbed and pilot, which is the first of its kind, and is also exemplifying the fact that California is really a visionary state that really is leading the way for many other states in the US. In the I-210 Connected Corridor pilot, one of the things that the team led by Berkeley, which involves Caltrans, LA Metro, Pasadena, Monrovia, Duarte, Arcadia, LA County, the City of LA, and many other stakeholders, is pursuing is a full integration of all the transportation infrastructure we have on the corridor. You can see a map here with the 450 traffic light assets, all the changeable message signs, the sensors, and all the other different control points we have on the corridor, which for the first time in history will actually be integrated into a cloud-based system running on Amazon servers to power more efficient operations of this corridor in real time. This is truly historical in that not only is it the first of its kind in California, but there is already plans to replicate the system outside of California by some other partner of ours. And so at the end of the day, what we're trying to help with here is a better management of freeway operations, given that a lot of the congestion we experience on this corridor, as well as many other corridors, is led to accidents. PATH, and presented here by Director Tom West, is putting together the concept of operation that will help the agencies and stakeholders operate this system. What's very exciting about this project is that this project also uses state-of-the-art data. We have access to statewide cold data records from major telco, which gives us a full opportunity to look at demand modeling in a completely new manner, as well as GPS data. I'm showing this here both for San Francisco, but also for the corridor from various providers, which give us very precise information about local features of traffic. This is also historically the first time that corridor management is operated at this level with these new sets of data. And so it's really an opportunity for me to thank Caltrans and Caltrans Director Malcolm Dougherty for this strong support, which has enabled this pioneering project to evolve, and which hopefully will be soon a flagship of what California can bring also to the rest of the nation. At the same time, I also would like to have a second part in the talk to talk a little bit about the future. So in the last decade, we have seen emergence of prevalence of smartphone app technologies that help people navigate the corridor more efficiently. And I'm going to flip a few news items which you've seen over the last couple of years. So initially, when these technologies came, mostly driven by the private sector, they enabled a few lucky motorists to navigate the system more efficiently. But soon, what you probably witnessed in your own neighborhood is increased traffic in side streets and other parts of the network that were not intended until the news media started to identify a few companies that might be responsible for it. I'm going to flip through many of these news items, but the interesting reaction of the California public is that people started to resist by trying to spoof the algorithm to go around their neighborhoods or posting fake signs to try to confuse people driving through their neighborhoods, and much worse, to the point that you can now find manuals online on how to spoof these apps to keep traffic outside of your neighborhoods. And as the, quote, resistance is getting more institutionalized, I think that, we're seeing already in some other countries the emergence of lawsuits against this company, which, should make us aware of the fact that we collectively, this group, all of us, public agencies, academia, and the private sector, have a responsibility to the public to come up with something which, as this future evolves faster and faster, will bring sustainable solutions to this problem we see growing everywhere in California. For example, the map I'm showing here shows you the places where the popular media has already mentioned this over the last couple of months. You can imagine that if all of these locations are locations where the problem is so severe that it actually happens to hit the news, this is a problem which is spread everywhere, and it's not just in California. So I would like to finish this talk to give you a sense of the type of analysis tools that the university can help develop to analyze this problem, because we collectively have a responsibility to fix it. I'm going to show you a movie which is a minute long, which is a simulation of what happens in this corridor if people did not use the apps, as opposed to if people were using the apps. And in that case, it's 20% of people using the apps. So let me narrate the movie as I play it. In the top part of the movie, you see what happens in the case of an accident with 20% of people using and following app-driven recommendations. In the bottom, they don't. It's the same scenario. So accident happens on the freeway. It's common. Lanes are obstructed. That creates a bottleneck. This is something we experience, many of us. If you have information, an app will suggest for you to leave the freeway, which is not crazy. At some point, the accident gets removed. The app does not necessarily know when or how. Therefore, the app continues to route people outside of the freeway. The set of consequences of these types of problems is interesting, because now, because of the app, you have induced congestion because the bottleneck persists. And that means that the app has actually created more congestion on the freeway. And if you pursue the analysis further, what you see is that the extra traffic that the app reroutes to the secondary network also increases congestion in these neighborhoods, because the streets are simply not equipped to support such a traffic. And the intersections do not have the capacity to process it either. And so what these simple examples show is that with better coordination between the private sector and agencies like ours, or university like ours, we ought to give a better solution to this problem that is currently happening. And this is something that we collectively have a responsibility to do, because the problem over the last 2 years has really been getting worse and worse. And we see already in other countries that, you know, the consequences of such an evolution could be even worse. With this, I'd like to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to present to this committee today, and I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions? Paul?
What are the barriers to widespread adoption of this traffic management? Is there enough computing power now to, when you put this on a large scale, to manage this?
I think that the number one barrier I would see is the fragmentation of the infrastructure. The fact that local jurisdictions have developed over the years infrastructure in isolation for good reasons, because they have separated networks. And so I think the main technical challenge is the integration of this infrastructure and the creation of models that can compute it. And I would put the computational aspect as the second part, because it is also a challenge. I mean, this corridor routinely supports tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of vehicles, which you have to simulate. And so, indeed, that would be the second biggest barrier of entry to more efficient operations supported by large-scale simulations.
So when you talk about next generation traffic management, what are the infrastructure? We're going to be considering a traffic management as a part of the asset management. So what are the things that we should be thinking about investing in over the next 10, 15 years?
We should be thinking about investing in the development of proper computational systems that can support it. And in that respect, also investing in partnerships with the private sector, in particular companies that do cloud-based computing, so that we have the proper resources to essentially do the proper computations. I think the infrastructure is vastly already there, but the integration is really where we should be looking at in terms of investment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 16.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Very ecstatic to be presenting this item in front of you today. It's my birthday. It's the first time that I get to spend a presentation. So, and first time for it to be webcasted. So I'll just give a shout out to my mom. Mom, thank you. I love you. All right, and my dad as well. Sorry, and again, my name is Jofil Borja. Thank you for having me today. So the second half of the legislative session is well underway. February 16 is the last day for bills to be introduced. Staff has been actively tracking legislation that meets the Commission's legislative policy. With the release of the 2017 annual report to the legislature, staff is happy to share that there has been interest in the legislative recommendations provided by the Commission. 2 of the recommendations so far have been authored by the Assembly. AB 1901 by Assemblymember Obernolte would extend a CEQA exemption for specific repairs within existing rights-of-way in a city or county with a population of less than 100,000 people. AB 1905 by Assemblymember Grayson seeks to reduce project delays due to environmental lawsuits. This bill would prohibit a court from enjoining a project solely of its potential contribution to greenhouse gas emissions if that project has been included in a regional transportation plan with a certified environmental impact report and a sustainable community strategy accepted by the Air Resources Board as part of the region's greenhouse gas reduction strategy. We recommend that the Commission support these bills as they reflect our recommendations, as well as accept the bills that are being tracked and monitored by the staff in your attachment. It is on pink.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Great report and happy birthday.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I got you this. I spared no expense.
Thank you.
We're so fortunate to have Chairman Fraser so active and engaged in our work as an ex officio member. If I'm not putting you on the spot, any feedback you can give us on the recommendations on these bills, I would always find of value.
Yeah, although,
You want to take my seat?
Chef.
it's the very top one.
There's no buttons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And not to interrupt, but how many actions do we have? Are we going to take these one at a time, or?
We were recommending 2 actions. This is the first of the second.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
And the next bill that I'd like to bring to your attention is Assembly Bill 1756. It's introduced by Assembly Members Breaux and Harper. This bill would repeal Senate Bill 1 and make it an urgency statute. This bill would derail crucial efforts to repair California's aging infrastructure, and considering the impact of this legislation, staff has drafted a letter to submit to Assembly Members Breaux and Harper in response to this bill. This letter also has an addendum of projects that would be negatively impacted within their respective districts if SB 1 were to be repealed. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt a formal opposition to this bill and approve the drafted letter, to be sent. That actually concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions, and sorry to interrupt Commissioner Guardino and Assemblymember Fraser.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously, number one, anything that we can do to streamline or augment the process that we want to be 100% behind. Number two, I'm going to kill that thing.
Mr. Chairman, I move to support staff's recommendation.
Motion by Dunn, second by Manaffer. Question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item 17.
Okay.
Stephen, just take it.
I'll just go. Thank you, Chair Commissioner Stephen Keck with Caltrans here with my budget and allocation capacity update. Slightly longer than normal presentation today, but I'll start with my usual first slide, which is where we are with allocation capacity to date. Through the December meeting, which was our last meeting, 58% of the capacity had been allocated by the Commission, leaving about $1.6 billion yet to be allocated for the remainder of the year. You can see in the little table that goes next to the pie chart that the STIP and the SHOP are off to a really good start this year. The other programs are lagging behind a little bit, but we expect to see those catch up in the spring as we get more projects on those programs. But again, we're well over 50% about halfway through the year, which is a good place to be. It's also time for my quarterly update on the G12. So the G12 is the delegation to the department to make minor increases and decreases to projects, which we then report to the commission. I do it now on a quarterly basis. Through December for the year, we've had about $36 million in project increases on 75 projects in the shop, which is more than offset by 91 projects with decreases of $74 million, leaving a net for the shop of $38 million in savings due to the G12. On the STIP side, it's a different story. We don't see a lot of decreases on the STIP side usually. So far this year, we've had 5 increases for $12 million. But again, net overall for the G12, we're at about $25 million in savings. The governor released the budget for the state 3 weeks ago today. And this slide here shows the proposed budget for Caltrans. The budget is $13.6 billion, which is an increase of about 14% over the current year budget. It is, of course, the first budget with the full year's implementation of Senate Bill 1, and that's the reason for the increases, primarily for the department. As you can see by the pie graph that we put together, about 47% of the budget is related directly to highway capital, including the project design and construction support. A quarter of our budget almost exactly is for local assistance. These are funds allocated by the commission that go to local projects, either through the direct local subvention or through local projects that are part of the STIP. 18% of our budget is for maintenance and operations, which is a pretty significant chunk just for maintenance and operations. About 6% for planning and program development, and the rest is the other programs in the department. Again, this is the first year of implementation for Senate Bill 1. And this, our Caltrans budget includes about $2.8 billion in SB1 funding, but that's only part of the picture. Overall, SB1 funding looks like this in the budget. There's about $4.5 billion in Senate Bill 1 funding. It's split roughly equally between state and local priorities. $4.5 billion is exactly in line with the projections that were made for Senate Bill 1 right after the adoption of Senate Bill 1. Now remember, the taxes and fees that were put into place will begin to increase with inflation in a couple of years. So we'll see more and more revenue as we get further out. But this year's $4.5 billion is exactly on line where we expect it to be. So we're starting off in a good place. I won't go into enormous detail about the different programs the funding is going to, but I'll note that on both the state and local sides, the majority of the funding, the vast preponderance of the funding is going to our core programs, shop, maintenance, bridges, culverts on the state side, local streets and roads, commuter and intercity rail on the local side. That's where the money's going. I'll note that the funding for these programs comes primarily from the 12-cent per gallon gas tax, provides about $1.8 billion of this funding. The transportation improvement fee that you pay at the same time as vehicle registration is about $1.5 billion. The remaining funding comes from diesel excise tax increase and the diesel sales tax increase. All of these things are part of SB1. That's what's fueling this huge investment. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that's going to be a little complicated. I want to spend some time discussing the monthly apportionment of fuel tax revenue, because there were some issues with the December apportionment that you may have heard about. Before I get into those, though, I want to relay a little bit of detail about how the apportionments work. So simply put, apportionments of the fuel tax revenue are the distribution of that revenue to all the recipients that are outlaid in law. So in this case, we're talking about fuel tax revenue. That fuel tax revenue goes to cities, to counties, and to various accounts in the state treasury. Senate Bill 1 created new taxes, and it also created new distributions of those taxes, new apportionments. So the new tax, the 12 cents on the gas tax, for example, is apportioned differently than the traditional 18 cents per gallon, and differently even than the price-based excise tax that we talk about often. The State Controller's Office has the very challenging task of calculating all of this and making apportionments to local agencies and to the state on a quasi-monthly basis. They actually do it on the second business day after the 28th of each month by law. which means sometimes you have 2 apportionments in a month, sometimes you have 1, and sometimes you have none. But it's always about 30 some odd days apart. So the money that the controller is apportioning out to all these recipients is what is paid into the state treasury by wholesalers of fuel. So the tax that you pay on a gallon of gasoline is already paid by the wholesaler by the time you pay them back. It's included in your price of the gasoline because they've already paid the tax. They pay that tax when they remove the fuel from the bulk fuel transfer station. They call that paying at the rack. I go into all this detail because there was a little issue that popped up in December that caused quite a bit of concern, and I'm here to explain what that was and how we're going to deal with it moving forward. So December's apportionment was made on January 2nd, and it caused some ripples because it was a little bit less than what people expected. So the reason for that is that this is the first apportionment that really takes into account the Senate Bill 1 revenues. The apportionments that were made were based on the ratio of the different taxes paid on a gallon of gasoline. I'm going to skip forward one slide just to show you what I'm talking about. Prior to Senate Bill 1, about 61% of the taxes collected was the base excise tax at 18 cents that's been in place since 1994. And the remaining was the price-based excise tax, which is currently 11.7 cents per gallon. That's pre-SB1. After SB1, after November 1st, a tax on a gallon of gasoline, this is just a state tax, 43% was the base tax at 18 cents. The price-based tax in the Senate Bill 1 increase of 12 cents was about 28 to 29% of the total. The reason this is important is because in December, the total revenue that was collected on gasoline was less than what you would have expected with those tax rates in place. And the reason that is because the taxes are paid by the wholesaler looking backwards. They're paying a tax. It takes some time to catch up. So it takes some time before that revenue is flowing naturally in the system. If everything was flowing naturally in the system, a year from now, for example, or even a few months from now, when we're seeing this full stream coming through, we would have calculated total revenue for this month to be about $100 million in what was collected. Now, we'll catch up later on. We'll get that money later. But it was apportioned as if that money was in the account. In other words, we believe the SB1 12 cents per gallon was not fully collected yet, but it was apportioned as if it was. So what that means is that the apportionments that would go to the traditional 18 cents a gallon and the price-based excise tax were much smaller than expected by about $100 million. This caused quite a bit of angst among recipients at local agencies and again in the state. And I'll just tell you, the Department of Finance is fully aware of this issue. They are working very, very closely with the State Controller's Office and what they call the Department of Tax and Fee Administration, which is used to be the Board of Equalization. They're working on a resolution, and I will be more than happy to present that resolution to you when it's complete. And I will tell you as well, January apportionments were just done. They have not actually published the sheet yet that tells us where it all went, but we've seen the deposits, and it looks good. Much more on track from where we expected. A few months ago, when I started talking about this new revenue, I said we would begin to see the full revenue at the end of January, and it looks like that's what's happened. This will be cleared up, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of the issue that some folks have been talking about this month. And I know it's a little complicated. I thank you for bearing with me. Before I wrap up, are there any questions on that one? Wow, great. So then I'll wrap up with, oh, didn't make it, okay.
So there are a number of transfers out that come before it reaches the apportionment stage, such as the a percentage of the amount for the active transportation program and a number of other programs. Did those occur at the full level despite the lower revenues?
So the transfer to the various programs did not occur at that time. They occurred sometime towards the end of this month, and they're still working out the details. And again, that's all wrapped up with the fact that the revenue is not fully flowing yet. It will, and there will need to be some sort of active fix, but right now it's still in flux. Oh, I was going to wrap up with this. Federal resolution, continuing resolution expires February 8th, according to our books. At the March meeting, we're going to bring forward a draft fund estimate for the active transportation program. We do that separately from the Stip and Shop fund estimate. In May, we'll bring the final for your approval. Also in May, we expect to see a May revision to the governor's budget, which includes new revenue projections, hopefully no negative changes to SB1. And then in June, we expect the budget to be enacted, and all the stuff I told you about with Caltrans's budget will take effect in July. And then also in June, we'll bring forward the draft allocation capacity for next fiscal year. And I'll end there.
Stephen, thank you for that presentation. Refresh my memory. Is there a formula that for local roads and how they get their money? Is it based on lane miles or?
Yeah, it's based on lane miles and registered vehicles in the county. But each tax is apportioned in a different way, but those are the primary factors.
And what? So they were increased by SB1 by what percentage approximately?
You know, I couldn't say off the top of my head. Let's just say something around the order of 46%. I'm making that number up, by the way. It's a good guess. So SB1 added 12 cents to the 18. It's in there somewhere.
Okay. Thank you.
So I wasn't really clear on the answer on Mitch's question. I guess I would rephrase it and just ask you, going down the road, if there's a variation in what is actually received versus what we anticipated, and let's assume like there are months where it's lower, does everybody share in that cut, or do some people still get their full share?
So almost nobody would get their full share under a scenario like that, because there are a few off-the-top programs that would get their full share, which I think is what Mitch was mentioning. For example, in January, you generally see a transfer out of the fuel taxes to Parks and Recreation. That occurs at their full amount. But usually the apportionments are based, again, on the ratios of the different taxes. So if the total pot is down, each pot would get less, which is what we experienced in December.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you. So the following action items will be presented to you for your consideration: adoption of the 2018 Local Partnership Formula Program, adoption of the 17-18 Road Maintenance and Rehab Account Local Streets and Road Funding, subsequent report of eligible cities and counties, and adoption of the 2017 Active Transportation Program, augmentation of the MPO component. Additionally, staff will present an overview of the SB1, draft SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines. And also I'm excited to note that yesterday applications are due for the local partnership program, competitive piece, and the trade corridor enhancement program. Once staff has a chance to log all applications, we'll be posting on the website. I just want to point out that when we post, we're going to make note that it's not in ranking order or any kind of type of consideration. Additionally, applications for our solutions and congested corridor program are due February 16th. Just want to note I appreciate it. I want to say thanks to all CTC staff for taking the all hands on deck approach to reviewing applications, and also thank Caltrans and the Office of Traffic Safety providing staff to help with this process. It's new. I'm definitely excited about that. That's all. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Matthew Yozgat, and I'm very pleased to be a new member of the Commission staff. Item 20 is an action item to adopt the 2018 Local Partnership Program Formulaic Program of Projects. There are 57 projects being brought forward today among 32 different agencies. The 2018 LPP Formulaic Program of Projects is funded from $100 million annually in state funds authorized by Senate Bill 1 that are allocated from the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account to the Local Partnership Program for fiscal years 2017-18 and 2018-19. The Commission adopted LPP guidelines during the October 2017 meeting. The 2018 LPP formulaic program of projects will allocate $173.4 million in funding to the 57 adopted projects over the next 2 fiscal years. The remaining $26.6 million in formulaic shares is expected to be programmed by June 2019, which is the end of the current cycle. This formulaic portion of the LPP program rewards counties, cities, transit districts, and regional transportation agencies which have voter-approved fees or taxes solely dedicated to transportation improvements. The 2018 LPP formula program share distribution was adopted by the Commission on December 6, 2017. Funding for the 2018 LPP formulaic program was made available to eligible agencies that submitted projects spanning a large variety of transportation outcomes. I want to highlight this because I think the LPP is very unique in its wide-ranging project eligibility criteria. Programming can be used on any component of this project. However, those components must be fully funded. They must be programmed no earlier than in the fiscal year which the particular project component can be implemented, and they must be matched dollar for dollar with committed funding. In total, 64 applications were received, among which there are the 57 that are being recommended for adoption. The other 7 projects were willingly withdrawn by their applicant agencies. Agencies that either withdrew projects or that did not submit applications for this meeting have let the Commission staff know that they do intend on submitting projects for this programming before the end of the current programming cycle. I would like to thank Juan Guzman and Jose Oseguera for the assistance they provided me in order to get this program of projects to your adoption. The staff recommendations are based upon the funding shares which were adopted in the formulaic program share distribution, agency recommendations, statutory requirements, and Commission policies as expressed in the LPP guidelines. With the adoption of the LPP formulaic program, almost $200 million in SB1 funding will be programmed towards vital transportation projects within our local and regional jurisdictions across the state. This program adoption will be the first of many SB1 programs to commence before the end of the current fiscal year. Staff recommends your approval of this item as presented in the staff recommendations.
So moved. Motion by Gardina, second by ARP. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 21, Garth.
Commissioners, tab 21 is an action item. As you recall, at the December meeting, the commissioners provided approval for staff to submit the initial report to the State Controller of cities and counties eligible to receive SB1 local streets and roads funding this fiscal year in fiscal year 17-18. These are formula funds apportioned monthly by 2 cities and counties by the State Controller for maintenance, rehabilitation, and safety projects on the local system. Statute provides a grace period for additional jurisdictions to submit projects to the Commission after adoption of the initial list, so they may establish eligibility through your issuance of subsequent report to the State Controller. Since December, an additional 20 cities have provided project lists to staff and therefore are also eligible to receive funding this fiscal year. These cities are identified in Attachment B, which is the last page of your book item. Today, staff will be asking you to adopt the subsequent list of cities as presented in Attachment B and direct staff to transmit this list to the State Controller. Following your action on this item today, a total of 537 of the 539 local jurisdictions that are eligible to access local streets and roads funds this fiscal year have submitted their respective list of projects. As a result, a total of 4,096 projects have been submitted by cities and counties this fiscal year under this program. The first apportionment by the State Controller of these funds is anticipated by the end of this month, and hopefully, as Mr. Keck pointed out, will flow smoothly thereafter. This concludes my report.
Commissioners,
it's an action item.
Motion by Gilmetti, second by Taglioni. Questions?
Garth, so we're missing 2 cities?
Correct.
And what do we know about those 2?
The 2 cities are the cities of Taft and Maricopa in Kern County, and they were just unable to get the resolutions to their boards for approval, and they were hoping to get to follow up in next fiscal year and be able to access the funds next fiscal year.
So is it a timing issue for them?
Correct.
My understanding is also there are some issues. These funds have maintenance of effort requirements, and I know in at least one of these cities they had spent an unusually high amount of their money relatively on local streets and roads, and so they're concerned that that will bump up their maintenance of effort requirements, so they're working with State Controller's Office to make sure they understand that requirement. We anticipate that they will be submitting next year to receive these funds.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 22, Dot.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Tab 22 is an information item to present the draft guidelines for the SB1 Accountability and Transportation Guidelines. This item provides an opportunity for staff to explain the process undertaken to develop the guidelines, outline key areas, and allows for additional input and discussion. Staff held a workshop in November 2017 to receive initial input, and a second workshop was held last week on the 22nd to receive input on a discussion draft of the guidelines. Staff has since updated the guidelines, and a new draft was distributed on Friday, January 26th. These draft guidelines are modeled after the Proposition 1B Program Implementation Plan, so there will be baseline agreements, progress reporting, and final delivery reports. Additionally, staff is currently working with the Inspector General's office to update the language for the audits in these draft guidelines, so that section will have some changes when we bring back the final at the March meeting. Additionally, staff is still working on the templates for the baseline agreements, and we will have those posted along with our proposed final before the March meeting also. In conclusion, staff would like to thank the various stakeholders who participated in the guideline development process and look forward to continuing discussions before presenting the final guidelines at our March Commission meeting. I would be happy to take any questions or comments.
We have a speaker on this item, Don Batisi, and then we'll go to the commissioners.
Thank you. I'm Dawn Batiste with the San Diego Association of Governments, and I really, thank you. I want to acknowledge and thank the CTC and staff for efforts to develop the guidelines that will implement the accountability and transparency principles in SB1 and in the Commission policies that have been established, and we would like to thank you for the open dialogue that continues to occur with all the stakeholders. We're looking forward to continued efforts to finalize these guidelines and also in participating in implementation of the various reporting requirements that are established. With that in mind, we just want to bring up a couple of points that we'd like to stress as we continue to work together to deliver very innovative and multimodal transportation solutions. So the first of these is to encourage consistency in the reporting across the modal programs, because we do have very innovative multimodal solutions that we hope to bring forward to the Commission for consideration. We would also like to stress the importance of avoiding duplicative formats or processes, recognizing that all of us are interested in doing, in meeting the transparency and accountability requirements in the most efficient way possible. Thank you.
Don, thank you for all your work on this, and thank you for sending me what was the Trade Corridor Improvement Fund baseline agreement. As you put together the baseline agreement for this program, I would just encourage you to make sure that there's true accountability, and I believe that accountability doesn't always come without consequences, and so that for many of these agreements that we're putting together, there should be some type of consequence, whether it be a defunding or some type of action that is a bit of a motivation. Please don't do that. Get that away from me, Satan. If you could have some type of accountability with some type of consequence in that would give the document teeth, I would like to see that, if at all possible, as you work through that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Item 23, Lori. I'm looking the right way.
Yes. Commissioners, this is an action item to adopt the 2017 Active Transportation Program augmentation for 3 of the 10 large MPOs. You should have this as a pink replacement item. The 3 being brought forward today are the Kern Council of Governments, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and the Southern California Association of Governments. The augmentation of the 2017 ATP was made possible because SB1 allocates $100 million in state funds from the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation account to the ATP starting in fiscal year 17-18. The initial programming capacity for the 2017 ATP augmentation is in the fiscal years 17-18 and 18-19. However, fiscal years 1920 and 2021 programming capacity became available as previously programmed projects requested advancement into fiscal years 17-18 and 18-19. The 2017 ATP augmentation includes $192 million in funding capacity for the 3 ATP program components: the statewide, the small urban and rural, and the large metropolitan planning organization. Funding for the 2017 ATP augmentation was made available only to projects programmed in the adopted 2017 ATP that can be delivered earlier than currently programmed, and projects that applied for funding in the 2017 ATP but were not selected for funding. The Commission adopted guidelines and the fund estimate for the 2017 ATP augmentation on June 28, 2017. The Commission adopted the 2017 ATP augmentation statewide and small urban and rural components at the October Commission meeting, and the other 7 large MPO programs at the December Commission meeting. For these 3 MPO augmentation programs, staff is recommending the following: 8 previously awarded projects valued at $112,662,000, advancing some or all of the project phases into fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. 34 new projects valued at $161,897,000, requesting $42,809,000 of ATP funds. Commission staff recommendations correspond with the MPO recommendations with 2 exceptions. Both of these are in the SCAG program. SCAG program, the City of Ventura Montalvo Safe Routes to School project design funds of $155,000 in fiscal year 17-18. Since SCAG adopted their program, the City of Ventura requested that the design funds be programmed in fiscal years 18-19. So Commission staff is recommending that we make that change now. Additionally, SCAG programmed $5,326,000 in total project cost and $5,326,000 in active transportation funding to the Los Angeles County, reconnecting Union Station to the historic cultural communities of downtown Los Angeles in error. The correct funding amount should be $6,276,000 in total project cost and $2,169,000 in active transportation funding. Commission staff recommendations reflects this correction. SCAG will make these revisions administratively, so the Commission's programming and SCAG's programming will correspond. With the adoption of these 3 MPO programs, the 2017 ATP augmentation will be fully programmed. In summary, SB1 made it possible for 52 projects in the active transportation program valued at over $300 million to advance and get started years earlier than originally programmed. And for 121 new locally implemented active transportation projects valued at over $437 million to receive funding. This would not have been possible without the passage of SB1. Staff recommends your approval of this item as presented in the staff recommendation.
Time out. We have a speaker first, and then we'll take the motion. Bill Thomas.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you in advance for the Kern COG and the money in the ATP augmentation. And since I'm up here, I'd like to thank Commissioner Arp for the timely delivery of a sugar jolt to the commissioners, and congratulate Paul in his ability to say no. It's the first time I've seen him in action in his seat, and he's easy to pick out standing up, and he's obviously clearly easy to pick out sitting down. Two friends of mine were mentioned earlier, Bill Lockyer. A completely unknown fact is that Bill Lockyer and I were roommates in the mid-'70s when we were both in the Assembly, and it was nice to see that he's finally gotten out of the government paycheck business after nearly half a century. And the other friend of mine was a colleague in Congress by the name of Ray LaHood. And Malcolm, he helped me enormously in getting the 2005 Transportation Act passed. In that bill was $750,000 to be delivered to Kern County, the city of Bakersfield, the county of Kern, and Kern COG, along with Caltrans, to build a much-needed connection for both not only regional but interstate work. And finally, I really appreciate and applaud Commissioner Inman in her election as chair over the 2018-2019 time period, because if the money designated in the STIP is delivered to the Centennial Corridor in the city of Bakersfield, and I know the first question is it shovel ready? I would ask you to go to YouTube and look at the Centennial Corridor Bakersfield video, which is 4 minutes of a drone flying the path of the Centennial Corridor, which is nothing but dirt, having previously been 225 structures. And along with the Kramer Junction groundbreaking this month, in 2 years, under the leadership of Chairman Inman, we will be able to take an interstate truck that crosses the line on the California border and goes with the assistance of the roundabout at Highway 43 in Stockdale, west of Bakersfield, all the way to I-5 with not one stop sign. Finally, in the center of the state, going through the 9th largest city in California, will be a multi-lane highway connecting the two busiest truck routes of I-95 and 5. So I'm thanking you in advance, and I'll watch your leadership very carefully, and we'll appreciate the result. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Now we know why you were so successful. Okay, now we need a motion. Tavallone, was a motion by Tavallone, second by Paul. Questions?
I had a question for Chairman Thomas, if he hasn't gone too far away.
No, I'm here.
Great.
And thank you.
Chairman Thomas, thank you again for your decades of leadership for our state. I always appreciate when you take the time to visit the commission and share the importance of that improvement in the city of Bakersfield and the county of Kern. Sir, we could use your help and guidance. When you were in Congress, you fought for California so incredibly effectively. We have members of Congress in our own delegation who are fighting against our ability to fund these improvements. And that is not good for the future of our state. And any counsel and insights you might have, real time or offline, I think we could all benefit from.
I would probably say right now offline. What I told Brian, and he's not here, was that I had heard about this person often, but I had never actually met him. And that was someone who went from the frying pan to the fire. I have high hopes, and I am working to make sure that the lift, which was quite heavy for many people, of getting SB1 passed, is the beginning of a long journey. And I've been around long enough that I remember back in the 70s, the now retiring Governor Brown was not all that excited about funding highways back then. Had we not stumbled then, no partisan statement intended, but it was a difficult time for California. I hope it's not that difficult now with the modest ability to build the infrastructure. The city of Bakersfield in Kern County was left out of all of that highway spending for almost 50 years. 2 years ago, we completed the first freeway, 7 miles, built since the 50s when Highway 58 dead-ended into 99. We have combined spent more than $1.4 billion between the city, the county, KernCog, and Caltrans in building an infrastructure which will carry us through moving, especially freight traffic, but connections horizontally across a vertical state. The real problem are the roads on the vertical part of California. And we have to make sure that SB1 not only is completely understood in how important it is, but that if we don't make the move now, I don't know when we'll have another chance. It was heroic. It was a wonderful mea culpa by the governor by changing his position, being in support of highways and infrastructure that's desperately needed in California. And you may think I've taken too much time, but I am spending a lot of time with people I know and I count as friends to make sure that SB1 is not only historic, but that doesn't become history. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your bipartisan and pragmatic leadership.
Last word.
There's
Rooming
no
with Bill Lockyer was really a bipartisanship effort.
Okay, we're ready for the vote. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we're going to take a